Hello and welcome to the Kuribros, a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime recap podcast. I'm your host, who had a bit planned for the opening, but completely forgot it because we've been vamping off camera for a while now. I'm Phoenix. Joining me, my co-host who threw me, it's Andy. How you doing, Andy, you son of a bitch?
Hey, I'm just being a son of a bitch over here. How are you doing, you son of a bitch?
It got really cold. I know this is gonna date the episode for when we recorded, but it was fucking cold last night.
It was. It was kind of colder today, or actually it was a little warmer today. I can't believe we're talking about the weather on a podcast, but it do be wintering.
Well, we would leave the weather talk for the news, but the news instead decided to have tarot readers out here to tell the prospects for various politicians.
I did see that. That was ridiculous.
Now I've dated the episode.
Somewhat, somehow. But
That's very funny.
It's been kind of a whole week. It's been a whole week, especially going through these episodes. It's been a whole fucking week.
Yeah, these were different.
It's not that they were bad, and I guess we'll get into it, but it's... What did we do last episode? Let's start there before we get anywhere.
Last episode, we had one pretty normal episode where we covered the duel between Rebecca from America fighting Yugi Moto to get back the Blue Eyes White Dragon that she believed was stolen by Solomon Moto. And then after that, we had the thrilling fantasy adventure of the Legendary Heroes, where Kaiba was trapped in a virtual world by the Big Five, and Mokuba went and recruited the gang of Yugi and Joey, and I guess Taya and Tristan were there too, to help him save his brother. And my Valentine showed up, and everyone cheered.
Woo!
Yeah, that.
It was pretty sick. Actually, the filler for that was pretty fun, if I do say so. I didn't like the Rebecca stuff. That was whatever. But Legendary Heroes was fun for what it was, and I can't really have, I probably had complaints and I'm forgetting about them now, but overall, kind of, it still leaves a more positive impression on me. But now, we are in our season finale for season 1, which is kind of crazy.
It is weird to think of this as the season finale, because normally a finale is where, it wraps up, everything that happened in the main season plot, but here it introduces a new character, and we're told he has a connection to what happened, but we never saw him before right now.
I'm gonna go kind of on a rant about this probably when we're all finished up here, about the pacing of this season and what they could have done and how they could have paced it out a little better so it actually kind of fits into a kind of final episode for the season. But we're gonna have to kind of get into it when we get into it. It is kind of weird how we kind of ended with this big arc with Pegasus, and then we have 5 episodes of filler and then 4 episodes of just a completely new game, character, story, and even the story doesn't even really matter all that much from a narrative standpoint as it's presented in the anime. So it's a big question mark, but it is introducing something that I really liked as a kid. I'm not even going to lie to you. I actually really enjoyed the game that Yami and this new character plays when I was younger.
It's very neat. I like that they're doing more stuff with Duel Monsters. Kind of felt like there was a bit more Season 0-y with it being a different game that's being played.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I like when they kind of have that original spirit of what they were trying to do with Season 0, with Yugi/Yami being a game master, not necessarily just a duel master, and showing their cunning in different ways that isn't just outplaying someone in a card game. That was kind of the more charming aspects of early Yu-Gi-Oh! Before it turned into a vessel for card games, which is fine as it is, and I'm not complaining about that they decided to go that route. I think it made the story a lot better, because I think they weren't really going anywhere. We're just doing a different game every time. But it still had this fun charm about it. I'm glad that they do bring it back here and there. It's just it's kind of disjointed presented in the anime, I think. I think that I really will go into it. The manga makes it sit in the story a lot better, and Duke, who's our new character, is connected a lot more than what he is presented with in the anime. And there's a lot higher stakes that get kind of disjointed And I'm going to have to kind of start spoiling a little bit of season 2 when I get into this a little bit.
Well, to avoid early spoilers, should we just slip and slide right on into the new boy?
Yeah, we have a lot to cover because this is going to be our season finale for the podcast. So, and we have 4 episodes and then our final thoughts on the season. So we got to get into it quick. So I'm going to be covering episode 46, which covers chapters 75 and 76 in the manga. We open on our venerable game shop owner, Solon Moto, cleaning up outside his store. He's seeming a tad bit down in the dumps when Yugi comes out to greet him and notices his slum demeanor. Just a quick manga note, we're already getting there. We actually get a little preview of something adapted in the next season of Yugi, with him changing the puzzle's like necklace. For the most of the series so far, he's had it on like a string or whatever, a rope. I don't know what you want to call it. But now he's got the kind of more iconic chain look that I think a lot more people know with nowadays. So that's kind of a little something he does in season 2 in the anime, but he does it in the manga. And it also kind of sets up stories in the manga that they don't really faithfully adapt in the anime. So I just wanted to also bring that up. Also, we get to see Yugi's mom for the few times she's shown, but that doesn't even really matter in the dub, apparently. I actually saw something that she was actually in the sub somewhere, and they completely omitted her from the dub. Did you get to see her in your episodes?
I didn't clock her at all. I didn't even think to be looking for Yugi's mom. I just assumed he existed in a gutter somewhere until Solomon Moto found him, saw he had similar hair, and named him his grandson.
No, she pops up, I believe, in the early chapters of Yu-Gi-Oh! And in this. And I saw something on Twitter somewhere where it's like a video. Maybe it's a deleted scene, but there was like scenes with her. But I don't know if they're either omitted or what. Or maybe just erased from time and not so people don't get confused or whatever. Either way, there she was. Yugi came from that woman, and we'll never see her again. Anyway, just as Yugi asks what's wrong with good old Grandpa, Taya shows up for their morning walk to school, and she also notices that Grandpa's a little disgruntled and asks Yugi what is going on, when Solomon just interjects. He's like, "I'll tell you what's wrong, you know what? There's a new game shop that's opening up and it's gonna run me out of business." He was, it's like one of those like kind of things where it's like, I'm upset, and he's like, "Well, what's wrong?" I was like, "Well, I'm glad you asked," kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yugi, a known lover for all things games, is understandably curious, even if it's against his grandpa's wishes. They head over to the shop on the way to school to see what all the hubbub is about. Someone hands Yugi a flyer about game shops for the game shop's newest game, Dugeon Dice Monsters. Taya pulls Yugi away, I think because in the anime, a cute girl is the one handing out the flyer, so she drags him away and says like, "Oh, we have to get to school or they'll be late," or something. I don't know if it's a little more like kind of like direct in the sub, but it seems a little less direct in the dub.
You are correct in your prediction, but it wasn't like a direct thing. It was just woman hands out flyer.
And she was like, "Grr."
Yes.
We turn our attention to someone who notices Yugi's presence at the shop, a man named Duke Devlin, whose name is in the sub.
He is Ryuji Otogi.
Yeah, that's what he is in the manga too. Duke and his cronies, I guess, you don't really get to see them after much of this, but they find it hard to believe that Yugi beat Pegasus at his own card game. Like, Duke thinks he like cheated for some reason, but he also seems to wish to challenge Yugi to prove he is actually the king of games. Completely omitted from the anime, and a big plot point in the manga is that Duke's actually in cahoots with his dad, a man hellbent on getting revenge on Solomon Moto for losing at a game that has made him wear a mask to cover whatever happens to his face from losing. Like, he's wearing like a literal clown mask. He seems to have groomed Duke into being his catalyst for revenge. I'll get more into this guy later, but I want to try and focus on what the anime adapts first and focus on some of those differences from the manga, since this Duke's dad's story plot is not done in the anime for some reason, something I'm going to really talk about. We see our friendship squad hanging out in their classrooms, discussing the new shiny game shop. They start talking about Dugeon Dice Monsters, and Joey seems to actually have heard of it from reading the paper on his paper route. After Taya inquires why Joey needs a job, Joey reveals that he has to save the prize money for his sister's surgery and that the doctor said she'll have her vision fully restored because he's got that money.
In the sub, the reason that Joey provides for having a job and how he was able to get a job despite being in school is because he actually got it approved by the school so he could pay for different school expenses.
I mean, that does make sense. I think it's kind of cool that attention to details added. It's nice to see that, like, you get that update from Serenity and everything, and you get to see that kind of, like, everyone's so happy for Joey, and it feels like that kind of reward for Joey doing everything he did in Duelist Kingdom. So it's nice to see. It's great positive news for them all. Suddenly, the gang notices a bunch of commotion in the school. We see girls swooning around a pretty boy with some dice and a cup, which is, weird, but I guess that was the cool thing back in the day. Dice and cups.
Yahtzee.
Yeah, Yahtzee. The pretty boy is Duke Devlin, and he's showing off his sweet gamer moves. Joey scoffs at this guy and his antics, and Taya actually calls Joey out by saying he's just jealous that Duke is more popular with the ladies. Joey tries to seem humble and says he doesn't need to show off that to be the best. Tristan then has some lame, unfounded comment about Joey's talents, which he has no place to say, and Joey boasts his accomplishments, but Tristan, your favorite card is Cyber Warrior or whatever, the 900 attack. You call Joey's wins based on luck. Fuck you. Duke notices Joey's braggadocious comments and approaches him about his game experience. Joey brags to Devlin about his victory against Bandit Keith and how awesome he is, but Duke decides to immediately turn his attention to Yugi. Joey's feeling a tad bit slighted and tries to prove to Duke that he is the best. Duke challenges Joey at a simple dice game to prove his mastery of the gaming, which Joey accepts. Duke places a die under a cup and bets that he can move the die into his right hand without touching the cup. Duke tricks Joey by convincing him that he already had moved the die without him looking. Joey falls for it and takes the cup off the table to reveal the die, which Duke swiftly grabs with his right hand. Technically, he never moved the cup, so he won the game. Joey calls Duke a con artist and challenges him to a game of Duel Monsters, which Duke accepts on the condition they both open new Duel Monster packs to make decks for both players. Kind of put them on like an even ground. And it's like, well, if you're such a great duelist, you could probably duel other people's cards and make it. Duke then decides to make the game a bit more interesting by upping the stakes. Duke says if he wins the match, Joey has to do whatever Duke commands of him for a week. Joey responds that if he wins the match, Duke closes his shop for good. Duke accepts and arranges the duel to be held after school at his game shop in their state-of-the-art dueling arena. He had to bring in that state-of-the-art part in his introduction to it. As we move on in the anime, the manga events of this are a tad different, so hate to break it to you guys if you're really into Duel Monsters, but there are no Duel Monsters game played in the manga from this point. Duke even made the slave bet on the die game we just talked about, so Joey already was embarrassed once. Joey gets upset, tries another game, betting double or nothing. The next game they play is a game, like a card game called Four Aces, where Joey has to match two of the same color cards, which he also loses at, and then he tries it again and loses again. But this actually makes Yugi start to see through the game and goes to defend Joey. Duke commands Joey not to talk to anyone besides Duke himself, which angers the gang. Joey tells everyone to kind of like stay out of it. He's like, stay out of it, Yugs. This is my problem. Which Duke responds with, don't talk to him, and he flicks the die. We see that in the anime, but he does it to Joey once, and Yugi, that gets Yugi upset enough to turn into Yami, which makes Yami challenge Duke to a game because that's the whole, that's the whole shtick of the show. And if Yami wins, Duke will do one thing Yami asks of him. Yugi then warns Yami of Duke's deceit, but Major League Gamer Yami is already aware of Duke's tactics. At this point in the manga, I will want to point out, like, Yuki and Yami are pretty, like, in tandem with each other. They seem to start really be getting close with one another, which is cool to see, because it's a little different. He explains that Duke is playing what is called a shell game, which misleads the challenger and benefits whoever initiates the game. Duke challenges Yami to 4 aces, but Yami demands he adds a joker to the lineup because it's like there was like 4 cards laid out on the table. Now it's 5. And they take turns drawing from the 5 cards. Whoever gets the color match first wins, and you automatically lose if you pull the joker. This is like a very classic OG Yu-Gi-Oh match which ensues, and Yugi wins as Duke pulls the joker. Duke demands a rematch, and the results are the same, which frustrates Duke. This is very like classic Yu-Gi-Oh, where like Yugi Yami outsmarts his opponents and understands the game that they're playing and can now play them. Very like King of Games kind of. Duke accuses Yami of a shell game, but then actually realizes it was all fair. They have like a whole couple panels of just ridiculousness that explain why it's fair. Yami tells Duke Joey won't be obeying his orders from now, as he proclaims Duke won't break their friendship. Because that was kind of Duke's whole point with doing all that, was he wanted to break up the friend squad, because that would bring Yugi and Yami to despair. But is what it is. Either way, that was a lot, and I'm at least done for this episode with the manga notes. So back to the anime. The gang show up to the game shop, and Joey is feeling extra cocky, and they also got new digs. I guess they went home to change before they wanted to face off against the wannabe King of Games. They meet with Duke, and they pull, like, Joey and Duke pull their packs and build their decks and whatever else, and Joey is feeling real sure of himself with these cards and everything. The gang finds out that Duke is, for some weird reason, broadcasting this match around the world. But Joey doesn't really mind, since he does feel he's the best of the two. He's like, hey, I was a finalist in Duelist Kingdom. What do you think I'm going to do, you lose? They begin the match where Duke opens up with Onitang T34. Joey starts his turn with Sword Hunter, which is a card I had back in the day, and I actually love that fucker, and destroys Duke's monster, bringing Duke's life points down to 950 right away. And Joey's monster actually gets a power-up from destroying Duke's monster. Duke draws and notices a useful trap card, but plays Dark Bat Defenseman and a face down the back row. Joey responds with Mad Sword Beast, another card I had, which was kind of a cool card, especially back then because I think it was one of the earlier cards with piercing damage, spoiler. Duke acts like this is no issue when Mad Sword Beast destroys Dark Bat, but Joey then explains Mad Sword Beast has what I mentioned before, piercing damage, so Duke's life points actually gets taken down to 550. Duke then reveals the trap Michizuri, which takes Sword Hunter to the graveyard as well. Joey isn't worried about losing his monster, but Yugi is kind of weary that Duke knows more than what he's leaning on. He's kind of doing like the Pegasus a little bit, but probably a little bit more cool guy, where he's like, no, that's crazy. Like, I lost my monster. Where Pegasus were like, oh no. Duke plays a card face down and then summons Spikebot, which destroys Mad Sword Beast. Joey draws into Goblin Attack Force, which takes out the Spikebot, which sends Duke's life points down to 50. But Goblin Attack Force's effect is to go into defense mode after it attacks. Either way, Joey's feeling confident in his victory, and Duke kind of actually seems a little bit unworried. Yugi tries to warn Joey, but Joey's really in his own world at this point. He's really kind of just fucking up. Duke finally turns the tables around by summoning Gradius and comboing it with Limiter Removal, which doubles its attack. But Joey's like, oh, well, it's okay because my monster's in defense mode, so it doesn't really matter. But Duke kind of spoils that security with the magic card Fairy Meteor Crush, which basically just does piercing damage as a spell card or magic card. Goblin Attack Force actually has 0 defense points, so all of Joey's life points are wiped out in one move. Joey kind of grovels into his defeat as Duke makes Joey wear a dog costume while doing that whole like dice flicking bit. He actually even says, why did I lose? Like, he kind of ponders why he lost, and he kind of goes, well, I was fighting for something in Duelist Kingdom. I wasn't really fighting for anything in this, which was, I think, a nice note that I missed before, but it kind of eases the pain of watching Joey lose like that a little bit, where he kind of learns his lesson from it. Either way, Yugi's had enough of his friend being abused as he turns into Yami and challenges Duke for a chance to free Joey. Duke then challenges Yami to Dugeon Dice Monsters for the title of King of Games, and for the stakes, if Yami loses or Yugi loses, to retire from Duel Monsters and never play it again. Yami accepts Duke's conditions and is determined to save his friend as the episode ends. Boy howdy.
So, 2 things I want to make note of real quick. Number 1, Fairy Meteor Crush used to be a nightmare, just in terms of having too many unnecessary words. Its original effect was, when your monster equipped with this card attacks with an attack that is higher than the defense of your opponent's defense position monster, inflict the difference as battle damage to your opponent's life points. This has since been eroded 3 times to be changed to, if the equipped monster attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. Way more concise.
They just cut the shit. They're just like, let's cut all the fat. Let's get the point. It is what it is. And that's why I kind of just like said, it's just piercing damage. They like go into a whole fucking thing about it, and I just go, It's just piercing damage. It's all it is. Even like equates it to Mad Sword Beast, but in a magic card. And at least the dub.
For a long time, piercing damage was just called Fairy Meteor Crush Effect in Yu-Gi-Oh!, at least in the community.
Really? I actually never knew that. I was never aware of that being the kind of thing. So they just called whatever piercing damage monster I'm going to Fairy Meteor Crush you?
Yeah.
Kind of thing?
We would just say, oh, it has Fairy Meteor Crush Effect. Which Magic has.
Really?
Yeah, which Magic has had Trample, which is basically the same thing. But I guess to make ourselves unique and special, we added too many words.
Well, that is kind of Yu-Gi-Oh's MO, isn't it? With the whole card game.
Too many words, the Yu-Gi-Oh story.
That is literally kind of sums up the card game, especially now. I think sometimes the reason I can't get back into it is I look at like walls of text. I know that's a very generalized statement. I know that's not every single Yu-Gi-Oh card, but man, they do be having those sometimes.
It is a problem. The other thing I want to point out is the Gradius monster used by Duke. So when Duke summons Gradius in the subs, he calls it Vic Viper. This is a connection to the Gradius game, which was produced by Konami, and the simplest description of it is a horizontal scrolling Galaga, and Vic Viper is the name of the ship that you pilot when you're playing Gradius.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a little Easter egg there.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting that they're kind of putting that in there. There actually does seem to be, and I'll kind of go into this as we get into the Dugeon Dice Monster part, a lot of like promo cards in these, like from the Rebecca episode up till now, where there's like a lot of these cards I remember getting in like McDonald's packs and like whatever promo packs, like the Millennium Shield and Rebecca's. I remember seeing a lot of cards from like the sets coming out at that time too. I believe Sword Hunter is in one of the like sets that came out around the time that series was launching and everything. I remember Uranzu from what's going to be in the next episode. I remember getting that in a McDonald's pack. Different things like that kind of brought me back. It's really funny.
I actually never got any of the McDonald's pack Yu-Gi-Oh stuff because I think when they were doing that promotion, my parents were still in like that weird, like the same problem Dungeons and Dragons had where it's the devil, and Yu-Gi-Oh was like the same thing. So they weren't super into me and my brother being fans of the card game, but they weren't really stopping us. But the one card I always wanted was Cosmo Queen.
Yeah, it was like, I think, the pretty big hit for that one because it was like a 2,900 attack point monster.
Actually, I'm going to check right now to see what the price on that is to see how much it would cost to just buy one.
It's probably not that much. Just like, what are you going to use that for? It's just a 2,900 hitter. It's a normal
McDonald's
monster.
promo one is $275.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's only that much because of the promo shit.
You want to hear something that I just thought would be pretty bad?
What?
That $275 is probably as much as a Happy Meal cost when that was in the promo.
It's kind of true. It's something along those lines. It has to be.
Every copy is like heavily played, damaged, heavily played.
Well, that makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I never got that card, but I do remember like a lot of those cards being like, those are a lot of the promo cards that I remember growing up with.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's what I was about to say. We're actually going to go on to 47, which covers, or loosely adapts, I should say, chapters 77 to 79. Before we get into the episode proper, I just want to quickly discuss how Yugi gets into dicing around with Duke in the manga. Basically, the Friendship Squad go to Duke's shop for the Dugeon Dice Monster debut, like a kind of like a PS5 going to the shop the day it opens, a big line, shit like that. Or like when, probably on a very less level, when like a cool new booster box comes out or a new like set of cards comes out and you want to get the new packs. They say something along the lines of like, you can only get like 6 packs per customer, things like that. And everyone's like, wow, it reminds me of Target and how scalpers were fucking taking over like Pokemon and now One Piece.
Yeah, scalpers are the worst part of being into card games.
It is literally the worst. Either way, there's actually a pretty funny bit of Grandpa catching Yugi trying to make business for the competition, only to kind of join in on the fun where he's like, how dare you, my grandson do this? Oh, new game. I guess you can't take the gamer out of the businessman, but you can take the businessman out of the gamer. Duke's dad watches the gang, and you kind of actually see him be abusive towards Duke when Duke actually informs his father of his loss to Yugi at school. He like slaps him, and then he goes like, "I'm sorry, I don't mean to do that to you, but sometimes you make me so angry," that kind of shit, like that abusive, like down talk.
Bad.
Yeah, not good. He's not a nice guy. The store opens and everyone kind of goes crazy for the dice packs. It's like there's like security everywhere and like everyone's like charging in. It's like Black Friday in America. I forgot to mention Duke's dad actually acts as the mascot, and the previously mentioned clown mask is a part of a clown costume for his character design. So like he is just undercover as like kind of the clown mascot for the shop. And he actually intercepts Yugi and sneaks packs of dice into his pocket to make it seem like he's stealing. He kind of like gives an eye to the security guard who takes them in. They drag him to the back and they take his puzzle and everything. They're like, "We're confiscating this. Fuck you." And they send Yugi to face Duke in Dugeon Dice Monsters. Yes, folks, it is not Yami who faces Duke in Dugeon Dice Monsters. It is Yugi. Speaking of which, let's start the episode proper. We are reminded of the stakes made last episode by our challengers as Duke changes the duel arena to a Dugeon Dice Monster arena. Yami is presented with dice and has to choose 15 to use for the game. Duke jokes he would help, but since Yami is such a master gamer that he should have no problem picking the best dice. I guess that kind of backfires on him later. Duke is a little more helpful in the manga as he at least lets Yugi know what type of monster comes from what like colored dice. So, at least it's a little more fair there. Yami and Duke throw their dice in the machine to be shuffled, and the machine like dispenses 3 dice they get per round and make their move depending on what they roll. Duke explains they have heart points instead of life points. In the manga, they actually include like a dungeon master who I think if anyone here is our age or a little older knows that Dugeon Dice Monsters did have like a spin-off board game kind of thing where they tried to make it work, and you got a little funny guy with like a hat and a cape. That is the dungeon master that they have in the manga, and you can like use that guy. He's omitted from the anime, but he's kind of like the king for those heart points as it can get attacked. Duke starts the match with his opening roll. As he rolls, he explains the crests on the dice. Different crests do different things. Duke focuses on explaining the summoning crest and how you need to get 2 out of the 3 dice to have the same type of summoning crest. Duke gets those 2 summoning crests and summons Ryukushin. Taya notices when the die unfolds, it has made a pathway for the monster, which Duke explains is a big part of the strategy for Dugeon Dice Monsters. They build pathways with summoning monsters to get to their opponent's side and attack their heart points. So it's more of like a board game more than like a card game, which is cool to see, something like different. Yami makes his roll, but makes no matches with his roll, which Duke finally explains the dice he pulled were too high level and goes on to explain the 6 crests on the dice: summon, movement, magic, attack, defense, and trap. How often these crests appear on a die depends on the dice level. For example, Duke used level 2 dice, which he had 3 summon crests on their die. So it was easier for him to pull out 2 dice with summon crests. However, the easier monster it is to summon, the weaker it is. Yami rolled level 4 dice, which had only 1 summon crest on each die. When he realizes he actually pulled a lot of those, so it's going to be very hard for him to get a monster on the board. The cheer squad calls foul on I actually should probably specify that because I realized Duke literally has a cheerleading squad, so the cheer squad kind of is a little appropriate for this. But the friendship gang calls foul on Duke's lack of information before the game starts, and Tristan demands a rematch because Yugi's at a disadvantage. But Duke explains if Yami/Yugi really is the king of games, he should be fine. He should figure it out. Duke starts his turn with his next roll and is able to summon another level 2 monster, Uranzo, the promo card that I was talking about earlier. Duke's side is starting to build, and Yami is nowhere ready to defend against it. Duke uses like a movement crest that he also rolled to move Uranzo. Duke also mentions if you don't want to use your crests, like the turn you roll something, you can store them in your crest pool, which is, thankful. Like, thanks, Duke. Thanks for that information now. Yami rolls. It has no luck summoning anything, which Duke mocks Yami for his lack of good rolls. At this point in the manga, the Friendship Squad is looking for Yugi as he was taken away without their knowledge. Like, they slip him away. The gang was unaware of anything. Duke's dad tells security to shoo them away, and the security holds the gang off, and Grandpa convinces the gang to have them wait for Yugi at his house because they're like, well, he'll turn up eventually, hopefully. Bakura, who is always in the Friendship Squad in the manga, we have to remember this, has a bad feeling about all this as we get back to the match. Duke makes his move, another roll and another summoning, Gator Dragon this time, and moves him forward with a movement crest. Yami rolls and gets 2 summoning crests finally, which makes him believe he can summon a monster, but Duke interjects that the levels on the crest are not the same, so Yami can't summon anything. Duke makes his roll now and is able to summon a level 4 dice, which is an item chest. I guess I'll come back later. Yami makes another bad roll to Duke's amusement, and Duke makes his own roll to summon another monster, the 13th Grave, who is getting close enough to start attacking Yami's heart points. Yami's starting to kind of, waver a little bit, but has to believe in the dice like he believes in the heart of the cards and makes his roll. So now we finally get him to summon something. Finally, he is able to make a summoning with a level 4 monster. I guess the odds are finally with him. Yami summons the Mighty Mage. It's also called Little Wizard in the manga. I don't know what it's called in the sub. I don't know if it's one of those two, but I assume it is one of those two.
In the sub, it is Mighty Mage.
Okay, so there you go. And uses a movement crest to attack the 13th Grave and destroy it. Duke isn't really too shaken as he makes another roll and summons Blast Lizard with a special attack that he hints at but won't reveal to Yami. Yami makes another roll and is able to summon a level 2 monster, one that we're very familiar with in Yugi's deck, Winged Dragon, Guardian of the Fortress #1. It's probably one of the last times we'll ever see that fucker, so take it in, buddy. Yami is feeling a little better with his chances now because he actually has another monster on the field. Duke rolls and gets no summoning crest to Yami's delight. He's like, finally, you missed one. He's like, but I didn't want one. Duke uses a movement crest and 4 trap crests that he had stored up to have Blast Lizard blow away Winged Dragon. See ya. Probably never see you again. Yugi's kind of taken aback, but makes his roll with little positive results. Duke rolls and is able to summon a level 3 monster, Dark Assailant, and uses 2 movement crests to move Blast Lizard and Gator Dragon within attack distance of Yami's heart points. We then get some lore on Duke in different ways at this point. In the anime, Duke reveals he created Dugeon Dice Monsters and should be the second greatest game creator in the world, and he blames Yami for it because Yami beat Pegasus. The day Pegasus lost to Yami was the day that changed everything for old Duke Devlin. We get a flashback of Duke working on Dugeon Dice Monsters and sending it over to Pegasus, who responds to him after a few days. Pegasus offers to fly him out and have a meeting with Duke and is flown to Pegasus' island the next day. Pegasus challenges Duke to Dugeon Dice Monster game, and Duke lost, which showed how strong Pegasus was at games, which is kind of cool. Pegasus loved the game and was offered to partner up with Duke to send the game all over the world, and Pegasus said he would draw up the official contract after he finishes up with a little old tournament he was about to host, and flew Duke back home. You then see, as he's leaving, you see the boat for Duelist Kingdom, which a boy named Yugi defeats Pegasus, and then Pegasus is ghosted Duke after the tournament, so that kind of sucks. Duke blames Yami for all of this and can't believe he was the one to beat Pegasus and thinks he cheated. And in the manga, Duke is a bit more interested in facing a great gamer like Yugi and tells him he knows Yugi's better than this. Like, he kind of encourages him a little bit. Duke reveals he knows about the Millennium Puzzle and the countless enemies Yugi defeated with it. Duke also informs Yugi that his dad told him about the puzzle and the prophecy it holds about the one who solves it will be given the title of King of Games. He wanted to face Yugi to test his ability since he was the one who solved the puzzle. Yugi questions Duke on his father's knowledge of the puzzle, and which Duke reveals that his father was an apprentice of a legendary game master, Solomon Moto, who informed him of the puzzle. Duke's father challenges Solomon Moto to a devil's board game in which Duke's father lost to Solomon becoming a hideous shadow of his former self. I guess it is kind of like a mini shadow game, what they're trying to do. Duke wants the puzzle and to obtain the power from it. Okay, enough of Duke's backstory. Back to the match. Yami makes his roll and gets to summon a level 3 monster Thunderball, but Duke's kind of like, oh, that thing's got a special ability that Yami definitely doesn't know about. So he makes a move to attack Yami's hard points, which he succeeds in doing away with the first hard point of 3. I forgot to mention that. There are 3 hard points. Yami is in a bind and questions how he can beat Duke as his own game as the episode ends. So we're kind of getting in the thick of it now.
Well, now that we're gotten all through that and you've been talking non-stop this entire time, let's give those pipes ears a rest and let me take over with a much shorter recap of what happened, because I'm not covering the manga.
Oh, thank you. I'll bring up the differences, but I'll talk more about them as later.
So, starting on episode 48, which also covers chapters 79 through 81, Joey is still off on the sidelines in a dog suit, while Yami is beat-booping on the duel terminal, or I guess dice terminal, learning how the game works. Yugi rolls some magic crests and uses them to activate Thunderball's effect, letting it roll in a line and destroy any monster it hits. This is done twice in a row, getting rid of Bomb Lizard and Gator Dragon.
Thunderball's actually summoned after Duke took out one of Yugi's hard points. Yugi does this interesting thing where he gets the summoning, but he doesn't dimension the dice right away. He just plays the die. They don't do this in the anime. Doesn't really matter if they do or not. But it's kind of interesting because he uses a trap crest to summon Thunderball to destroy 2 of Duke's monsters. He lures Duke into attacking a hard point so he could take out the 2 monsters, which is, I think, really interesting. Also, another thing, I just want to talk about this. He had a computer that told him the game, and he was struggling before. And suddenly there's a computer.
Hey, Andy.
Yeah?
How many times have we been playing Dungeons and Dragons, and you've asked me how an ability works while you have the books in front of you?
But what I'm saying is, he had the resources before. He had them right there. He could have looked at them then, but there wasn't established to be a laptop in the first episode, and then suddenly there is one, and now he can sweat. I'm trying to give you a bullshit here, because usually you're the one who gives bullshits.
I mean, I saw the terminal there at the start.
I don't remember. I don't remember that.
Looks like Phoenix takes the dub on this one, because I decided I do.
You know what? I was trying to give you a Yami pulls something out of his ass kind of thing, or they give the Yami an advantage that he wasn't looking like he had before, but
Oh, don't worry, I'll cover that later.
Oh boy. All right, keep going.
Outside the game shop, Grandpa Moto is strolling along, and he sees the spectators watching on the big screens and joins them. There's another bit here we're not going to talk about, it's bad. Back into the match, Yugi is praising Duke for making such a fun game, and Duke is feeling the flow, but he is a little upset afterwards, thinking that he's trying to get thrown off of his game. Duke rolls and whiffs it, and then Yugi rolls a successful summon of Knight of Twin Swords, and stores up some movement die. Duke then rolls to summon Battle Ox and move it to face Yugi's Knight and attacks. There's some game nonsense about beast types being strong against warrior types, and Battle Ox gets a little bit stronger, and Yugi just declares that the Knight goes into defense mode so it doesn't die from the battle, which is whatever, but I guess it shows that Yugi's learning how the game works.
Yeah, that probably seems to be what it's trying to convey narratively.
Yugi then rolls 2 attack crests, which enables a special attack that then destroys the Battle Ox. Duke then reveals to Yugi that the way the board has been laid out throughout the game is cutting off the spaces where Yugi can summon monsters. Duke then rolls a special rare summon with a black die, which summons the Warp Vortex.
Ooh.
The Vortex enables quick movement of monsters across the field, and Duke intends to roll another Warp Vortex in the future and place it further into Yugi's territory. Yugi then rolls and summons Strike Ninja. Duke rolls another black die, but does not get a successful summon. Yugi then reveals to Duke that he also has a black die, and he himself successfully rolls the Warp Vortex. Then, Yugi moves the Strike Ninja through the Vortex, putting it on the far side of Duke's field, where it rushes out and destroys Ryukishin.
Strike Ninja was actually summoned with the Warp Vortex in the manga, which is interesting. And it literally, in the panel, it's like the dice is dimensioning, and he, jumps right into the Warp Vortex and destroys, Duke's monster, which is kind of funny. I think that was just, kind of an interesting thing that they did. He uses it in the anime, it's, 2 different moves, but in this one, it's, one fail swoop, which I think was a kind of a quick and fun way for Yugi to turn the tables.
Yeah. The dice are neat. Duke then whiffs his next roll, and then Yugi rolls, moving the Strike Ninja and attacking Duke's life directly, evening the score between them. Duke then rolls a successful summon and plays Orgoth, the Relentless, and powers it up with some magic crests before moving it to Strike Ninja and attacking. Yugi quickly Googles the rules and uses Strike Ninja's ability to dodge the attack by paying Trap Crests. Yugi attacks Duke again with the ninja, taking the lead 1-2. Orgoth now attacks again, but with Yugi out of stored Trap Crests, the ninja is destroyed.
That's where we end the episode?
Yeah.
Well, I kind of wanted to point out a little something. So, something that I have a complaint with in the anime is Duke's characterization in general. I think something that really is shown in the manga with Duke is he's not really out for the same revenge as his dad, and you can kind of start seeing that. We start really seeing that as this match goes on. But you actually notice when he loses his first heart point and like Yugi's starting to come back that Duke gets like noticeably excited. You really start to see there's like a competitive spirit from Duke that is swallowed by his father's revenge. Once Duke loses his second heart point, Duke's dad comes in for interference for something that's more adapted in the next season. But basically he interferes and breaks the puzzle in front of Yugi to psych him out. Kind of to just like fuck with him in a little bit. That's stuff that happens in season 2, and I don't mean to spoil too much with it. A bit of this Duke's dad subplot is adapted at the beginning of season 2 with like Yugi getting the chain on his puzzle and like getting it taken somehow and it being destroyed and a lot of other stuff that I don't really need to get much too into further, but that's your preview for season 2.
Speaking of previews for season 2, episode 49, covering chapters 82 and 84, opens up in the sub with a new intro where we get to see some shots of different characters we haven't met yet. I've met them in the past. You'll meet them in the future.
We didn't get a new intro. We just got the same old one. What the fuck?
Sure did.
Dickheads. Fuck you, 4Kids.
More dubs for the dubs.
Or you mean for the subs?
Fuck!
Anyway, you're going into what, chapter or episode 49?
Yes. So, at the opening, Yugi rolls and uses his knight's ability to double move. I guess the Knight of Twin Swords just does a bunch of things twice. Duke rolls and moves Orgoth into the Warp Vortex. Yugi rolls and musters his monsters together to defend against Orgoth. Duke moves Orgoth and uses more magic crests to power it up even further, and has it destroy Thunderball. On the sidelines, Joey is still in a dog suit, and Tay and Tristan are lamenting Yugi's lack of space to summon a monster. Yugi rolls and attacks with Mighty Mage, but Duke uses a defense crest to block the attack. Duke then moves Orgoth towards the mage, uses more magic, buffing it again, and destroys it. Joey on the sidelines cheers for Yugi and tells him to win for the sake of the people that Yugi beat in Duelist Kingdom. As the king of games, Yugi can't lose faith in himself, otherwise it would be an insult to all those he has beaten. So it would sort of spit in the face of those who you've defeated on your path to being the best. If you just give up, it's an insult to them if they lose to someone who is a quitter.
Yeah, like Pegasus.
Well, I wouldn't say Pegasus quit. I'd say he had some optic surgery that didn't go so well.
No. I'm saying it's an insult to Pegasus.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was evil.
Was he? Yes. Yes, he was.
He was a little silly about it, though, so we overlook a lot of the atrocities.
He also does become good in the anime. He's dead in the manga.
Oh, yeah. Turbo Deadsies. Someone should tell Duke.
Well, he doesn't care. That's the thing. The whole Pegasus-Duke connection is not a thing in the manga. There's no connection to that. There's actually, funny enough, I'm pretty sure there's a spin-off Yu-Gi-Oh manga that's kind of overseen by Takahashi, but I know someone else writes it, or takes pretty much the helm of writing and drawing it, where it's like there is a guy who wants to avenge Pegasus in some way, shape, or form. I have to read it. It's something I haven't actually taken the time to read yet, but I know it's like, I think it's something in between Battle City and Millennium World, technically.
You know, I'm glad we bring up Pegasus now, because I just remembered something I wanted to cover. I think it's a good thing that we never see Duke and Pegasus meet in the anime, and I want to tell you why.
Okay. Tell me why.
If they met, we would have had to deal with Pegasus calling him Dookie Boy.
Oh, you know what? You're very right.
Yep.
Big old Dookie Boy. He's about to...
Oh, that's Dookie Boy and his Dookie Dice.
His Dugeon Dice Monsters or something like that.
I don't think you like my game, Mr. Pegasus.
Oh, no. It's great. Well, I'll draw the contract tomorrow or in 3 days.
Dugeon Dice Monsters.
Ghosted.
Yeah, because he's a ghost now.
Aww.
Yeah, it's fine. He's with Cecilia or whatever her name was.
Yeah, they're happy together.
Cynthia.
Oh, yeah, Cynthia. There's Cecilia. There's Mabichia.
Carolyn.
Interesting.
I don't know.
White girl.
White girl. Save me, white girl.
We should get back to the episode.
We should.
We won't.
We'll try. Yugi gets fired up being cheered on by Joey and rolls his dice. He moves the knight to face Orgoth and uses attack crests to give his monster 6 attacks. In response, Duke uses one of his monsters to turn 3 trap crests into 1 defense crest, blocking the destruction. Duke then rolls and destroys the Knight of Twin Swords. Duke's getting confident, but wonders why Yugi is not more shaken. Yugi rolls a whiff, and Duke moves Orgoth forwards and attacks Yugi directly, bringing both players to 1.
Uh-oh.
Yugi then rolls a big 4-star summon and makes a goofy shape with the dice to enable the summon of Dark Magician. Duke gets a quick flashback to when he played Dugeon Dice Monsters against Pegasus, and Pegasus added Duel Monsters creatures, to the game. As Dark Magician is a monster that Pegasus added to the game, Duke does not know all of its abilities.
Oh, they actually don't mention this stuff in the dub. They just kind of go, "This is my trusty monster, Dark Magician, da-da-da-da-da." All that stuff. They don't. That's actually a really interesting addition that they really should have added in the anime. Actually, kind of would make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I guess it would be a little bit of, I don't know, some intellectual property lawsuit if Duke made a game and already put Duel Monsters cards in it as monsters.
He already did, though. There's Battle Ox. And I think there's another monster that he played that made me go, I'm pretty sure we've seen that before.
Ryukushin?
Did we see Ryukushin in Duel Monsters? I know it's a Duel Monsters card.
We may have seen Ryukushin powered.
Maybe. Also Winged Dragon, Guardian of the Fortress.
Yeah, he was there. And then he wasn't.
Yeah, very quickly.
Yeah. Anyway, Yugi moves the Dark Magician to face Orgoth and destroys it. Duke is seething, rolls his dice, moves the Dark Assailant to the treasure chest he played episodes ago, and opens it up. Inside the chest is revealed to be Monster Cannon. Monster Cannon can fire one of Duke's monsters to destroy Yugi's monster. And he does so, firing his Dark Assailant. This is just Catapult Turtle, but for losers.
That's kind of true.
In response to this, Yugi uses Dark Magician's ability, Magical Hats, which does the hat hiding gimmick and never fails.
Never.
A blank hat is destroyed, and Dark Magician emerges unscathed. Duke begins to retreat with his monsters, and Yugi rolls Magic Crest using another wild ability Dark Magician has of Magic Box to swap places with Yoranzo, destroy it, and now be right in front of Duke's life. Duke has no monsters left, and Dark Magician attacks, winning the game. So that's my little bit of bullshit about how Yugi just gets his trusty Dark Magician with 2 abilities he has the resources to use, which can't be blocked.
You're right. That's a pretty bad bullshit there. It's kind of really funny.
After the game, the Friendship Squad and Duke, minus the cheerleaders, not to be confused with Yugi's cheerleaders, but Duke's cheerleaders, they're not there, are all hanging around, and Duke is lamenting his lost dream, but the squad hypes him up for making a cool game. Yugi and Duke shake hands and are friends now, I guess. And then Duke gets an email from Industrial Illusions about making an official contract for Dugeon Dice Monsters. And then it ends.
And that's it.
That's it. Show's over. Go home.
Pegasus ain't dead in the anime. That's the confirmed.
So, what happened in the manga to cap this off?
So, I'll kind of just go through everything as like it is its own episode, but it's a little quicker. So, there's stuff like after Duke's dad breaks the puzzle, Duke actually feels bad and starts picking up the pieces and apologizes to Yugi for his father's actions. He stands up to his father, which is a really nice scene, and reminds him that this is his battle and he needs to be the one to face Yugi. After Duke beats Yugi's Mighty Mage at one point, Yugi starts feeling the weight of his disadvantage and starts questioning if he can win. Then suddenly, Evil Bakura shows up and reminds everyone that in 3,000 years, only Yugi has been the one to be able to wield the Millennium Puzzle. So he's like, listen, you're a special boy. Figure it the fuck out. He says that even if Duke tried to wield it, he would die. Evil Bakura even tricks Yugi into thinking that Evil Bakura is on Yugi's side and has turned over a new leaf. He's like, no, we're pals now. It's okay, Yagi. He doesn't say that.
You got it, yogurt.
Evil Bakura looks at the board and predicts Yugi's victory in a few turns.
Yeah, I'm friends with all of you. There's Yogurt, there's Jonathan, T, and yeah, that's all of you.
Yeah, there's no other one here.
Yeah, I remember your duel on the roof with Kibble and
yeah, and also Bakura.
yeah, and me, back rub.
Back rub. So and then events go on and as they normally did in the anime, but after the Knight of Twin Swords is destroyed, Yugi actually moves his Dungeon Master away from Orgoth, because I remember I said it's actually another monster on the board before it gets attacked. Duke is feeling assured about his victory and even tries to solve the puzzle in front of Yugi. But the puzzle pieces won't connect for him. He's trying to do some cocky bullshit, or not like cocky, but he's like trying to do some prove himself bullshit where he's like, look, I'm such a good game master that I will solve this puzzle. But he's like putting like puzzle pieces that he knows are in that spot, but they're not going together. Bakura reminds Duke that only Yugi can solve the puzzle because he's the chosen one with it. That's when Yugi figures out the path to summon his monster. Like, that's the thing that triggers Yugi to going, puzzle, weird wonky shape. But it is not Dark Magician that Yugi summons in the manga. He summons a monster called Armor Wizard Pazu, which is like some sort of like rock thing. Kind of, I'm trying to think of like a good comparison. Like, you know, the rocks you can like you can smash in like a Pokemon game, especially like the early Pokemon games.
Yeah,
like it's all like crumbly.
Yeah, and they're like U-sized.
Yeah, just think like that. Like it's
okay.
Like, it's literally just that, but with a face and arms.
Weird.
Its special ability is it can turn into things. So it turns into a shield to actually protect the Dungeon Master from Orgoth's attack. And after he's able to defend his Dungeon Master from Orgoth, he uses Pazu's other ability to turn into a sword strong enough to have his Dungeon Master destroy Orgoth. After Duke's strongest monster is destroyed, Duke has no more moves left and loses. At this point, the story turns into stuff that is truly adapted in Season 2. As I read this, I'm kind of confused on why they never faithfully adapted this arc with the whole Duke's dad subplot and just added what they would add later on in Season 2. Narratively, it makes sense and shows growth in Yugi instead of just Yami. Duke isn't just some pretty rich boy who's blinded by hate from Yugi beating Pegasus. You get a lot of interesting friendship interactions with Yugi and the gang, even in stuff we'll cover later in the series. It's just kind of feels like a waste to not have these events to cap off your first season. I think it all could have been done, especially if you took out like the previous filler arcs and used those episodes to give time to the amid storylines. So you have 9 episodes left, and I'm not saying you need to use all 9 episodes for this, even though it probably would have made a little, well, so you probably could have used those last 2 episodes or the last episode to do the stuff that they cover in Season 2. I don't know if it's a 2-parter. I guess we'll get there when we get there. I feel like this all could have been done and narratively well enough that you wouldn't be like sacrificing anything, and it would actually only help your story, because I think this is a little, kind of going into the final thoughts with this arc. It's a little disjointed. Wouldn't you agree? It's a little just kind of its own thing, and like we talked about earlier, it's weird that they capped it off with this. And you could say, well, my point is, if you added the extra stuff with what Duke's dad does later and what they kind of adapt in Season 2, and I know that they're using those events to set up the main antagonist of Season 2, but I don't think it's really necessary. And I think you could have actually ended it with it, because it's a really interesting moment for Yugi. There's a lot of good friend moments with what the friends do to save Yugi at the end of the manga of this arc, and it seems like a good way to kind of like round up everything, at least if you're trying to end the season with this story. I don't know, it's just it's kind of a frustrating thing to see when you know what the adapted material is and you know that it's significantly better than what we got.
Yeah, this definitely felt out of place. The dice game kind of fit in more with the legendary heroes, with it being a little bit different from the typical Duel Monsters episodes we're used to. But at the same time, the legendary heroes did kind of do like a light diet version of what we already happened in Duelist Kingdom, so we already sort of recapped everything with that.
Yeah, it's like I'm not gonna say I hate the legendary heroes filler, but I did hate the Rebecca episode. I don't know. Okay, hate's maybe a strong word.
Rebecca was definitely the most out there because, like Duke, she was also out of nowhere, and we're told she has beef, and here's why. And then we had a 1-episode duel, but Duke's beef kind of felt a bit more grounded and believable.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about with like, I feel like you wasted episodes on things you could have added to make your story better. And this is kind of, I think, one of my problems when we start getting into, because we're going to get into our overall thoughts on season 1 in a second, but it's just, I don't know, it's a little frustrating because I think it makes the story kind of suffer a little bit. Not too much. Like, I thought it would make it suffer more in the overall, but this is where it really hurts because Duke comes back later, like, spoiler alert, and as just a side character, friend, cheer squad guy, but like, it's more believable for him to come. Like, I understand more now why he's coming with the gang and he's a friend of the gang now because it makes a lot more sense and he has a better connection. It's not, again, not rich pretty boy who now they're friends because they worked out their differences. I could believe, even like if Duke's dad wasn't involved, that Duke could have been friends with the gang and naturally and believably. So it kind of just sucks that isn't the case because I think it stands to make Duke's purpose there a little less, seemingly less needed. Because he becomes more of like a side character, and yeah, he doesn't do a whole lot from my recollection in the manga, but at least like you understand why he's there. With this, it's just like, oh, he's just another character that people liked, I guess. And he does nothing. So I don't know. It's a little frustrating to see on a personal level after reading what I read.
I think this may have been possibly, if I were to make a wild theory, it may have been one more instance of Takahashi had an idea for a game he wanted to show in season 0, but now that it's all fully committed on the Duel Monsters thing, this was his last chance to show one of his other ideas before going all in on it's just more duels.
I do know that when they were doing the Duel Monsters in season 0 era, or that kind of the part of the story, that's what people respond to. Like when you are putting out a manga, and especially because especially in like shonen or whatever, like weekly shonen or whatever, you would get, when you're a newer mangaka putting out a story, there's like rating systems and you have to stay within a certain rating system and people give feedback and everything. I don't know how it is necessarily now. I'd love to know now because I want to kind of I'd love to figure out a way to put some of these comments for some of the newer manga coming out. Kind of complete side note, whatever, but I do know he got a lot of feedback saying people love the Duel Monster stuff. So that's why he kind of continued on with Duel Monsters. It's nice that he does like not fully commit to it 100% where it's everything's a Duel Monster thing, kind of like the anime, because unnecessarily Duel Monsters duel with Joey, kind of an unnecessary Duel Monsters duel with Rebecca, whatever. So it's nice to see that, and I know we'll see that more as well. Besides Battle City, you don't really see it in Battle City. It's all dueling in Battle City, but that's for an understandably narrative reason. But I know later on we're not always going to get Duel Monsters, which is really nice. And I think it's nice to see that Takahashi still always had understood what the story was from the heart and knew it wasn't just about the cards. It was cool. So that's kind of it. We are at the end of the season 1, and as disjointed as it is, and we did kind of beat the big bad guy 9 episodes ago and everything, we are finally done, and we're kind of at the end of season 1 for the podcast, which is kind of crazy, don't you think, Phoenix?
It's definitely been... It was a different experience than I thought it was going to be when we set out. One I've enjoyed a lot more than I thought I would. It's been super cool going back and doing this with you. And it's wild to think that it's going to keep going forever.
Forever and ever. Phoenix is staring at me like with like wide eyes right now. I think I'm being held hostage. Sorry. So kind of, since this is the season finale, I'm sure we can kind of put the episode a little longer. Let's kind of talk about our overall season 1 thoughts. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first? Kind of.
I'll go first because I'm a bit more manic than you. I've absolutely loved this rewatch. It's been so cool to see how Season 0 was feeling out the story and all the different games that were played between Yugi and the villain of the week and getting, closer connections with the friends and seeing the show get audience feedback and how that actually affected it and led it towards the Duel Monsters spin that is why we're talking about a show from 20 years ago today. Comparing subs and dubs has been a roller coaster of wild characterizations that I think have also been swayed by how Japanese and English releases view their audiences, with the English having a much more jokey and casual, less serious approach to it, and Japan having more nuance with his characters, like Kaiba and Joey's characterization, where Kaiba's not just a, oh, you losers can't duel, and actually seeing him sort of start to take in the message that Yugi wanted to convey with him in their very first duel about the heart of the cards, and Joey being a much more serious character who wants to prove that he can be someone on his own, versus in thinking of the match with Joey and Rex, where Tristan had no confidence that Joey could do it.
Yeah, it's really frustrating.
I adore my Valentine now more than I did before and cannot be trusted to go an episode without mentioning her. So my Valentine mentioned.
So maybe we should have like a button or something, or just like a counter of how many times my Valentine's mentioned in an episode or something.
Well, she's in the new intro, so I get to see her every time I watch that.
Oh yeah.
I can't say it's been a perfect show so far because there are some things that are just weird or out of place. Certain episodes have rapid-fire POV shifts between a duel and something else, like the Paradox Brothers and Kaiba walking through the woods.
Ugh.
Certain scenes have not aged well, like some stuff with Grandpa being an old man and there are young women around, or Mai being a woman abducted in the middle of the night in the woods.
They really try to like master Roshi, Grandpa.
Yeah, and it doesn't go well. It shouldn't go well. It's a bad character trait to bring up, but minor issues also with the game, but those are kind of forgiven because the game wasn't fully fleshed out yet, so they didn't know what everything was going to be. Overall, I think it's been a great ride so far, and we're moving into the most well-remembered part of the story in Yu-Gi-Oh!, and I hope it keeps being this fun for us and for all of you, and I'm looking forward to recapping it all.
Yeah, this has been really fun. I mean, so for me, it's, after covering 76 episodes between season 0 and the first season of Duel Monsters, I kind of have to say, I feel as though my rewatch for this season has been a much more enjoyable experience overall. Like, when you first proposed we do this, I was kind of like, oh, we're going to have to do Duel's Kingdom first, and it's going to be kind of a drag because of everything. But there were duels I used to love to watch as a kid that I don't feel as attached to anymore, kind of like the Paradox Brothers duel, or of that nature. But there were duels as a kid I didn't care about to watch, like the Kaiba versus Yugi rematch. Like, I didn't really care about it because Yugi lost, and I didn't like how he lost, but now I understand it a little better. And I love it now. The anime generally does a decent job at adapting what it was given, but I really feel like it could have went further, and I really think there were storylines omitted and revamped that I don't really get why. But I also understand I do not have a perspective as someone in the Japanese animation industry and also in the American one too. But I think more in the American side, it's more like the dubbing and how 4Kids likes to cut shit up. And that's just what they're famous for. Like, I'm sorry. They're famous for cutting it all up, censoring it, and putting it out as what they think is digestible for the American audience, which I don't necessarily agree with, but that is my own personal thing with them, and 4Kids really isn't around anymore, so it doesn't really matter. A few pacing issues here and there, like you kind of just said before, kind of with the Paradox Brothers to the Kaiba shit, And there's, some filler I think is unnecessary, especially now knowing that it could have been replaced with something else. Did enjoy some of the filler, mostly stuff like Yugi and Joey's final match, and Legendary Heroes was pretty fun and things like that. But overall, I had more fun than I thought I would revisiting this season, and only kind of excites me more to, cover the future material like later on. I'd actually give season 1 probably a 7.5 out of 10 if we were to give like a personal rating for it. It's a good adaptation of the material overall, and like going back to it, I see a little bit more of the faithfulness adapted than I really thought, and it's glad I kind of got to see that now. But it really only could have been better. This is my big problem with it. Like, sometimes I feel like I tell like a normal person or someone who's like in our age group, oh, I do a Yu-Gi-Oh anime recap podcast, and they kind of go, really? Like, some people are really stoked on it. I'm not going to discredit those people that I've talked to, but like, there are definitely people who, grew up on the show like we did and probably watched it a little bit, but also realizes how corny it is. Like, I've seen like people that go like on TikTok and like talk about how corny everything is, and the dub is in a way a little corny. I think the voice actors do actually a really good job for the most part, and I think they bring a certain character to the, like, they bring their own like flair to the characters that I think is really cool and is hard to replace. I can understand where they're coming from, and it makes me sad to know that there is like a better story that was sitting and waiting that they did not want to adapt, or they for some reason wanted to adapt in a completely different way. I guess tone it down a little bit, but still there are things that you could have done to make it more sense and have it be a little bit more exciting, which kind of bums me out. But overall, season 1 was a pretty fun watch.
Yeah, it's a good show. People should watch it.
Yeah. And then listen to our podcast after they watch the episodes. We have now a whole season's worth of episodes for you guys to listen to us recap on. And it's only going to go up from here because we are actually going to be going into... So, first of all, I guess to kind of go with our future plans with this, because now we are at the season finale of this podcast, we're going to take a little break from Yu-Gi-Oh! Just for 2 episodes probably, and just so you guys can have a little breathing room, and also I think
so we can have a little breathing room.
We just talked about 76 episodes worth of Yu-Gi-Oh! Overall. I know we generalized like 27 of those episodes with season 0, but we also then just did talk about 49 in like episodes in depth. We like other things.
Yeah. That's a lot of show to just talk about for what, 6 months?
Something like that. I forget how long it's been. We've been at this for a little while now, recording wise, and then also editing and things like that, and preparing for this show.
I think when we first recorded, you weren't married yet.
I have to date. You have to date that back or not? I have to like check and see when we recorded that episode. Either way, it's been a while.
It's been a while. Got him.
So we are going to do 2 episodes. We're going to take a break from the series, kind of, because the first episode we're going to do is around. So it kind of we scheduled these episodes out so we know when it's supposed to come out release wise, and I believe this next episode that we're going to do is around the time of the release of Godzilla X King Kong, that new movie coming out this year. Hey guys, future Andy here, currently editing this episode. I need to make a side note that literally the day after we recorded this episode, it was announced that Godzilla X King Kong was going to have their release date moved up from when it was originally supposed to come out, which I believe was April 12th. I'm not going to check that right now because I don't have the time, but it's now coming out March 29th for, as most of you know. So the Godzilla episode is going to come out the same week it's was supposed to come out originally in America. It's going to come out in Japan that same time, but that same week is when we'll get that Godzilla episode. So this week it'll be the American release of Godzilla X King Kong, and then 2 weeks from now the Godzilla episode will come out when I guess it comes out in Japan now. Sorry, can't really fuck around with it too much, but hope you guys enjoy it. Back to the episode. Bye. boy, howdy, do we love that big lizard.
Yeah, I was really stoked when the the 2014 Godzilla came out. Like, I remember, like, sitting down with you, making you watch Godzilla Final Wars before we went to go see that the same day.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know
And
what's
now,
going
like,
on.
you've been going, yeah, no idea. Terrible movie to start with the franchise.
The final
Not
one.
a great movie in general, but it's fun. And now, like, you've been going on a tear trying to watch all the Godzilla movies, and so it just felt right for us to, cover something that we both love so much that's gonna be getting bigger and bigger in the public media sphere.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't want to date this too much, but, like, Godzilla Minus One came out in the last, like, few months, and I loved it. I loved Minus
Phenomenal
One.
movie.
It's an amazing movie. I was just talking about with actually some family members today where I was like, yeah, it's the one time I'd ever actually recommend a Godzilla movie to anyone because I just think it's just that good of a story. And I highly push you guys to watch it in however it is out media form when this episode comes out. Yeah, I've been on a straight tangent. I just finished the first era of Godzilla movies, and I'm on the second one now. So we're going to go over Godzilla, the first one, the 1954 one. And we'll also talk a little bit more about our enjoyment of it. I'm going to be watching a few more movies by the time that we go with this. Right now, I just watched Godzilla versus Biollante last week. And then I kind of had some shit to do this week, but tomorrow I'm going to be watching the next Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, and so on and so forth. Maybe I'll be done the era by the time we record next episode, and I'm really excited to talk about that with you. But we are mainly going to be focusing on Godzilla, the first one, the OG, baby, because it is just a very fun old movie, and I just want to have like a little discussion about it. It's going to be a little bit more, I assume, a little bit more freebase, like kind of discussion based than like recap. I'm sure we'll go through the movie and everything, but
yeah, it'll probably be a shorter episode.
We won't go through every single little detail. We'll just watch the movie again, and we'll talk about the story. We'll go through it. It's not going to be as scripted as this, or kind of like laid out as in more of it, because we like read off like our notes and everything. We're just gonna kind of talk about Godzilla and everything else. So if you're into that, please check that special episode out. And then the next one, we are going to go back to Yu-Gi-Oh! As I suggested watching the 1999 movie that's before the Duel Monsters, that is kind of like supposed to be for the original Toei Animation Season 0 stuff. There's like a hour movie, a long movie, or like a 45-minute special or something. So we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, just a little short, getting back into the Yu-Gi-Oh feel of it, going way back to the way before times.
And that'll be really fun. And then we will go into season 2 proper the next episode, and I will finally get to finish talking about what Duke's dad was doing and how they changed that up in the anime.
What that dad doing?
That dad doing not a lot in the anime, let me tell you.
That dad don't exist in the anime.
That dad ain't real. Duke was born out of thin air. But anyway, thank you guys so much for those who have listened to us through this first season. I just really want to thank you guys. It's been really fun to do this. I hope you guys have had a lot of fun listening, and we'll hope to kind of keep the ball rolling and make it even bigger in season 2. So just thank you, and it really means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to Phoenix that everyone's like support, no matter how big and small.
Yes, all the support and messages, the reviews we've gotten from you guys, they do mean so damn much to us, and really push us to keep making this, knowing that there are people out there who enjoy what we're doing.
Yeah, we hope to kind of get a little bigger as the season like goes on, and we're kind of really figuring this out and whatnot, but it's been really cool so far, and it's been a great learning experience, and we hope to only grow as this, because when this comes out, it'll already be 2024, and it's 2024 now. I don't even mean to really date that, but it's, we'll be well into 2024 when this comes out, and hopefully through this next year, and we get into season 2, we hope to really grow and in this little niche community, and hopefully the Yu-Gi-Oh community really accepts us, I guess.
Yeah, and if enough of you start making noise about us, Konami will have no choice but to let us make a reboot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where we can turn that 7.5 rating to a 7.6.
For season 1. And maybe you can get it all the way up to an 8.
I don't think we should set the bar that high. That's unrealistic.
You know, you have little faith in us. And this whole thing's about friendship, and we're friends, so we can do anything, says Yu-Gi-Oh!
All right, fine. 10 out of 10, or we, I don't know, we burn the whole thing down. We scrub ourselves from the internet. No more episodes ever.
Nothing. We're completely done. We'll go off the map. We'll go to the woods. We'll have a nice little log cabin, and you'll never hear from us again.
Gone forever, reduced to ash.
And on that note, do you want to do your whole social bit?
Sure, I'd love to. You can find me on the internet playing various card games, mostly, sometimes to touch other stuff, at twitch.tv/PhoenixFarce and youtube.com, also Phoenix Farce. That's PhoenixFarce. Find me there doing regular gameplays, still working on getting a schedule that's consistent. It's been all up and down with the way my work has been, but if you support me there enough, I won't have to do work, and I can do that work, which means you'll see me all the time, all Phoenix, 24/7, 365. That's a lie. I'm still going to take some days off, even if that does happen.
Phoenix TV.
Phoenix 330 something. I don't know. I haven't broken it down yet. There's a lot to think about in that. I'm choosing not to until I have to. Anyway, hope you all stop by. I love seeing people interact with me. I just had someone who came into a stream this week. Well, this week for me. Who was sharing some 3D prints that they made of our Kuribros logo, which that was an awesome way to start the week in the new year, dating the episode exactly now.
Oh, yeah.
So that really meant a lot to me to see that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I know this episode won't come out for a few months, but shout out to, I forget the name. I'm going to look up I had the name. I even shouted them out on the Instagram. So you got your shout out there, but thank you to
Type Fruits.
Thank you so much for Type Fruits. You really, actually, honest to God, means a lot to us that you took time to 3D print our little mascot guys. So,
and because of what you've done, a piece of us exists now
with you
forever. We're a part of your life. You can't undo the fact you made that. We are you now.
Thank you so much, Type Fruits. I appreciate it. And if please,
I don't think the medication I'm getting is the right doses. I'm getting a little manic.
Well, anyway, my socials is Pappasergi, PAPPASERGI. You can find me on Instagram, doing whatever the hell I decide to do on that. I really haven't posted too much on there as of right now, but my big New Year's resolution is to get that ball rolling in some way, shape, or form. I just got to figure out how to balance that with this and my normal life.
My New Year's resolution is to get even more swole.
Me too. But you can find Kuribros where all the social media links are below. We have a link tree that has all our stuff and Phoenix stuff and things like that. And yeah, thank you guys so much. For season 1 finale, I'm signing off. I am Andy.
I'm Phoenix.
Giddy up and see you next season.
We're going to talk about a lizard. Yeah!